know what I'm saying? Go and do the knowledge yourself, and you'll find a lot of information. I couldn't cover a lot of things because I tried to keep everything a little focused. On the left, we have the coat of arms. Now, what's interesting is that the coats of arms of municipalities that I'm going to show you today are still all in effect. They're not like, you know, from the 1300s, and they're not in effect right now. These are actually the coats of arms that are still over all these different municipalities. Okay, now also I found a lot of Catholic and Protestant Moorish nobility, and it would seem almost as if they started getting into conflict with each other, and it wasn't so much that Caucasians destroyed the empire. It was more or less a lot of inward fighting amongst the families. I called it Europa because Europa is actually the original name of Europe, for those that don't know. It's named after an African queen who was kidnapped by Zeus, who took the form of a bull and went into Africa, North Africa, kidnapped her and rode her back to Crete. He then proceeded to rape her and gave her 3 children. To this day, any major law that's passed in Europe is called a bull. And this is just a commemorative coin commemorating the signing of the Constitution, which brought Europe together as one body, sort of like a United States of Europe. Okay, the lecture outline is going to initially deal with sovereignty, familiarizing any of y'all who are not familiar with what sovereignty is and what it's really rooted in. Then we're going to deal with the Holy Roman Empire versus the Roman Empire. And doing my research, I discovered that there was 2 Roman empires. In school, they really only teach you about one Roman empire. The Roman Empire that they teach you about actually was not an empire at all, because it didn't have a coat of arms. Okay, it actually was a republic, a nation state, which was given permission to exist by the sovereign empire called the Holy Roman Empire, which in fact was a Moorish empire. So, again, you got to keep in mind that you have 2 Roman empires. So when you do your research, remember, holy, in the 5% lessons, we learn that whenever you use the word holy, it's something that's made or grown from the beginning. And here, it's the same thing is relevant, because the Holy Roman Empire is in fact the Moorish Empire, and we will get into that in a minute. Bavaria, we're going to cover Bavaria in depth. Most of the lecture is going to deal with Bavaria. Now, most of us really never heard of Bavaria until we hear about the Illuminati, we hear about Adam Weishaupt, we hear about Hitler and the Nazis, all starting in Bavaria. And it never really occurred to me that right in the place where they would begin all of their madness is right where most of our history is at, and it's still intact. Then we're going to deal with Islamic nobility and its original relationship with Europe's Christian, Catholic, and Protestant nobility. And it'll be a totally different picture from what history paints, as far as the Muslims being barbarians and coming in and destroying stuff. Okay, then we're going to deal with the Illuminati and its relationship to European nobility. And finally, we're going to summarize everything and just go into a little additional Moorish history. Sovereignty and the basis for nobility. Sovereignty is the exclusive right to have complete control over an area of governance, people, or oneself. A sovereign is the supreme lawmaking authority, subject to no other. What you got to keep in mind is that nobility is rooted in heredity, in bloodline, and it's rooted in one's connection to a landmass. So it's kind of like, for those who are familiar with the fact that when European settlers came here, it was indigenous sovereign Moors who gave them the charter to do business. It was pretty much the same thing in Europe. Okay? And you always had the sovereign overseeing and being the final say in everything that went on in Europe. And the way they teach you in history is totally different, because they don't really tell you about the indigenous sovereign empire of indigenous Moors, but we're going to get into that. There's extensive history that's dealing with that. Okay, national sovereignty is of an eternal origin, such as nature or a god, legitimating the divine right of kings and absolute monarchies or theocracy. All right, the Holy Roman Empire versus the Roman Empire. This is the coat of arms of the Holy Roman Empire. Again, the Holy Roman Empire, as you will see, is a Moorish empire. They have the two black eagles back to back, and this dates back to about the 11th century. Interestingly, after the fall of the Roman Empire, which was the Republic, and when you start doing the history, you realize the fall of the Roman Empire was done by the Ottoman Empire. Now, when we study Moorish history in Europe, we tend to overlook the Ottomans, who were Moors as well, and it's a lot of our history inside the Ottoman history. We're going to get into the Ottoman history as well. Okay, the German practice of electing monarchs, because nobility is inherent in all of us. So the Holy Roman Empire was basically a coalition of sovereign people who came together to elect an emperor to basically be the head for a certain period of time, but it wasn't based on hereditary descendancy, like if I die, my son becomes the emperor and nobody else get a chance to be the emperor. So this was basically a collection of ancient Germanic tribes that formed a coalition and elected leaders thereof. Elections were regularly held by the Franks, whose successor states included France and Germany. The French monarchy eventually became hereditary. When they say hereditary, they still mean that, see, the French still participated in the Holy Roman Empire, so they still participated in elections, but at the same time, within France, the monarch, it more or less, started to, and also, the times where these things start to change is when they start to marry into a lot of Caucasians, and a lot of the original laws and everything was abandoned over time, but they still held elections where, as a collective body of monarchs or sovereigns, they would elect an emperor of Rome. And again, you got to keep in mind that the Holy Roman Empire is not the Roman Empire that you were taught about in school with Julius Caesar and all of them. In fact, the Holy Roman Empire did not even have Rome within its borders, which is interesting because, they didn't even have Rome within the borders. The central location of the Holy Roman Empire actually was in Eastern Germany, in Bavaria. Okay, and the empire's territory extent varied over its history, but at its peak it encompassed the territories of present-day Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, the Czech Republic, Slovenia, Belgium, and the Netherlands, as well as parts of modern Poland, France, and Italy. For much of its history, the empire consisted of hundreds of smaller kingdoms, principalities, duchies, counties, free imperial cities, and other domains. Despite its name, the Holy Roman Empire never included Rome within its borders. Now we're going to deal with the Roman Empire, which is what most of us are familiar with. The Roman Empire, again, was a republic, okay? And after 500 years, it then became what they would call an autocratic form of government, because Julius Caesar was appointed the first perpetual dictator. Okay, but it was never an empire, and in fact, what I found was that at the end of the Roman Empire and the beginning of the Holy Roman Empire, or the reestablishment of the Holy Roman Empire, the Holy Roman emperors made formal contestants, or they would contest any claim to hereditary nobility by any of the Roman emperors who were like Julius Caesar, Constantine. All these people were basically, they would file complaints on them and be like, y'all can't even claim to be nobility because y'all not indigenous to this land. So basically, it's like kind of like the same thing we going through right now over here. And it was basically the indigenous Moors basically reacclimating their sovereignty in Europe from about 1000 AD to about like 17th century. That's about the time when the Roman Empire started to, the Holy Roman Empire started to fall. Okay? I Googled, once I realized it was two Roman empires, I Googled the coat of arms of the Roman Empire, and in the Wikipedia, they got it just like this. They got a question mark, because there's no coat of arms for the Roman Empire, because a coat of arms is actually a sovereign instrument for conveying law and basically, put it like this, a coat of arms is actually called a coat of armor and mail. The real name is it's abbreviated as coat of arms. It's actually called a coat of armor and mail, and it was used by sovereigns to convey law, and post. So the Roman Empire was never soft. Despite what they may tell you in your history books, or they may call its rulers emperors, it was not an imperial state, and it was not recognized as such in history. It's still not recognized as such in history. And all you got to do is recalibrate your mind to really see through all of the trickery that they do. Because again, the Roman Empire really wasn't an empire. It was a nation state, and it was given a charter, and when it got out of line, a sovereign empire came in, the Ottomans, and shut it down. Moors. Okay? Roman Empire versus the Holy Roman Empire. Again, like I said, Charlemagne, who was the first emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, and again, any pictures you see on Charlemagne, when I did my research, I found that all of the paintings on Charlemagne was at least 400 years after his death. So you can't really go on any pictures that you see of Charlemagne, because that's probably not him. You know what I'm saying? That's how I look at it. Well, I think our challenge now is to really define our position in history and basically, define how we see everything from our perspective. Okay? And to me, if all the pictures of Charlemagne is only like at least 400 years old, we gotta get a little more, on point as far as just accepting what anybody that doesn't really have our interests at heart would tell us. So, this is the flag of the Byzantine Empire, which, again, they throw empire around like, like it's all right. Empire implies indigenous bloodline to a landmass. Yes, sis.
I apologize for my logo. I can't see that here, so I don't know if I
Everybody else can't see it?
Yeah, we see it clear. We're up to the front.
Huh?
We're up to the front. We see it clear.
I think it's fine.
You want to sit up in the front, sis?
Bring it up to the front.
You want to come up a little closer?
Not necessarily, I just wanted to expand it.
And it's fine.
Oh, huh?
I think it's
You back
fine.
the table a little bit, maybe.
It's really it's a little difficult right now. I don't even want to really do it.
It's fine. It's probably the lighting or something.
That I
You can
can
also
see.
put some
The
things
smaller
on.
words, the smaller print.
Oh, the smaller print?
Yes.
Okay, this is the flag of the Byzantine Empire, the so-called Byzantine Empire, because once you understand sovereignty, you understand that an empire, you can't even really claim to be an empire unless you're a collection of sovereign monarchs. Okay? If you're not a collection of sovereign monarchs, you can't claim to be an empire. And the so-called Byzantine Empire, which picked up where the Roman Empire left off, and they call it a continuation of the Roman Empire. It was actually never called the Byzantine Empire during its existence. The term Byzantine Empire is an invention of historians and was never used during the empire's lifetime. The empire's name in Greek was Basilia ton Romone, the Empire of the Romans, a translation of the Latin name of the Roman Empire. The term Byzantine itself comes from Byzantium, the name of the city of Constantinople. That's the name it had before Constantine came and conquered the city. Okay? The designation of the empire as Byzantine began in Western Europe in the 1500s. So again, a lot of times they start to rewrite history and then they make everything retro apply to the new stuff that they come up with. But it's still a lot of it's a lot of information that you can look and find that will, disprove a lot of the stuff that you hear in school or a lot of popular opinion. Okay. Before the 1500s, the empire was described by Western Europeans as Imperium Graecorum, Empire of the Greeks. Again, this is interesting because if the Byzantine Empire was the remnants of the Roman Empire, and we know that the Romans so-called conquered the Greeks, why would they be called the Empire of the Greeks, and why would also Greek be the main language of the Byzantine Empire? A lot of things just don't add up. Byzantine claims to Roman inheritance had been actively contested from at least the time of the coronation of Charlemagne as Emperor Augustus by Pope Leo in 800. Okay? So here you have documentation that Charlemagne was contesting the inheritance of any so-called emperor or ruler of the Byzantine Empire, as well as the other Roman Empire, which was already dissolved. Whenever the popes or the rulers of the world wanted to make use of the name Roman to refer to the Byzantine emperors, they preferred the term Imperator Romanae instead of Imperator Romanorum, a title reserved only for Charlemagne and his successors, because again, nobility is tied to one's indigenous connection to land. Now we're going to get to the meat and potatoes of the lecture right here, which all takes place in Bavaria. Bavaria, again, is where the Illuminati, where you have the Illuminati starting out. Also, the Nazis have their start in Bavaria. So it's a lot of stuff takes place in Bavaria. And what's amazing is that they've suppressed a lot of information, but in Bavaria, where all the real meat and potatoes is at, they still got Moorish coats of arms on all of the key locations. Again, Bavaria is the seat of the Holy Roman Empire in Germany. And I would have never thought that the original man or Moors were in Germany doing this like this, doing it big like this. Now this is the mighty Vesta Citadel in Coburg, Bavaria. This is actually what I would call the most important part of the Holy Roman Empire is Coburg, Bavaria. Okay? Coburg, Bavaria, and again, this palace, the mighty Vesta Citadel, is the grandest palace in all of Germany. So it was definitely a central place for the Holy Roman Empire in its time. Now, most of the Holy Roman emperors were, prior to becoming emperors, they were dukes of Bavaria, and they all, at one time or another, had a very powerful position in Bavaria. Bavaria is also, as you will see, it's the seat of the Archdiocese of the Holy Roman Empire. It's also the seat of the hereditary imperial marshals of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, if you notice, it sits on a mountaintop. Now, it is my opinion that these ancient palaces are built on ley lines and meridians. When I went to Spain and I went to the Alhambra Palace, in the tour they tell you that the Alhambra Palace is built on a meridian, and all the palaces are sitting on big hills or big mounds looking down on the town. And when you go to the Alhambra, it's just a grand feeling when you're up on that mountain and you're looking at all this beautiful architecture and you see, you know, all of this natural, beautiful stuff around you. And it's definitely an energy center. This is the Alhambra Palace. It's actually on a mountain as well. And what I found out in Bavaria, Bavaria has some of the biggest mountains in Europe. They have mountains that go up to 3,000 miles high, which is unbelievable. I was like, you know, now in these districts where you have all of this amazing land, it's still Moorish districts, as you will see. This is the coat of arms of Coburg, Bavaria, okay, where the palace is at, where I just showed you. Now, the palace there, the Vesta Citadel, it was built in 1225 upon the site of an 11th century chapel. Again, all throughout Bavaria, when you do the research on the castles, you find that they were even built on sites of much older architecture, establishing the fact that this goes back into ancient history right here. Now, Coburg is also interesting because the Protestant Revolution, or the German Revolution, because the Protestant Revolution and the German Revolution are actually synonymous. This is where you start to put together the pieces of the Illuminati, of the present House of Windsor, and it's interesting because the Protestant Revolution, as well as the American Revolution, or the American Civil War, can be traced right back to Coburg, Bavaria. I don't know if any of y'all familiar with Martin Luther. How many of y'all familiar with Martin Luther? Okay, so y'all know about him posting his complaints on the palace walls. Well, it was at the palace in Coburg, and what I came to realize is that the Duke of Coburg at the time was his financier. So he was basically like, you know, he was working for him, basically. Martin Luther worked for the Duke of Coburg. And what's interesting, it was called the Diet of Worms. And it definitely seemed as if a plot that is still in effect nowadays, from this time, is still in effect, because you find that the same families are in power to this day that was in power at this time, And, you know, for example, the House of Windsor, the present British Royal House, is a new name, okay? Prior to 1917, you cannot find any history on the House of Windsor because it's just a name that they made up in 1917 to hide the fact that they were a German royal house ruling England while England was at war with Germany. So it didn't really make any sense. So they basically created the name Windsor to sound more English, because initially they are a German house out of Coburg, Bavaria. Okay, prior to 1917, if you do any research, you'll find that the House of Windsor is really called the House of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. This is the coat of arms of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. Now, it's interesting because you see certain Moorish colors. You see like the red, the black, and the green. And you also know that the Coburg family crest is a Moor. So up until and also Coburg is the capital of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. This is where the British Royal House, the present House of Windsor, the capital of it, up until 1917, was Coburg, Bavaria. Okay? And they changed the name because when World War I started, and you best believe they had something to do with it, but they didn't want the people to start an uprising because they were a German family ruling England at the time. All right? Also, when you do research on the House of Windsor, you find that they're really, even though their claim to power came through Coburg and through Saxony, they are actually of the House of Wettin. And it was at a time when there were no more male heirs, and so the wife, the Wettin line, repartitioned the land amongst her family. All right?
Let me ask a question.
Amongst the associated royalties, one individual's 20th century association with Coburg proved especially tragic. This was that of the British Royal Charles Edward, Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, who ended up arrested and tried as a Nazi. You gotta remember, when doing your research, you're gonna find that the Nazis, all of that stuff starts in Bavaria.
Brother, I got a question.
What's up?
Do we still have two questions? Do we still have more? Is there like still a sovereign Moor still living on that land?
I mean, I'm not sure, but one of the things that you will start to realize is that the present royal houses of Europe, which are all tied to the House of Windsor, because it's at Coburg where you'll find that during the 19th century, in the 1800s, right at Coburg, in that castle, because a lot of history takes place there. This is where all of the royal ducal weddings, or weddings that brought together different royal houses together and formed unions amongst families of Belgium, of Austria, of France, Germany, Russia. In fact, they would all go to Coburg to have the weddings. So Coburg is a very, very special and important place amongst the present nobility, and it was also important amongst the original Moorish nobility who actually started the Holy Roman Empire.
My
Now
second question.
Mhm.
I'm trying to understand like where we kind of mix in. It seems like we're getting a mix of two or one. This is where my question.
Okay,
Melanated Moors over there, like are we talking about melanated? Are there also Caucasian Moors, sovereigns?
Well, what you have to understand is that sovereignty is rooted in one's bloodline connection to a landmass. So, in order for the present nobility to claim nobility, they have to claim descendancy from the family crest.
Right.
You get it? This is the family crest of Coburg right now, 2008, March. If you Google Coburg, Bavaria, you're going to see that this is the family crest right now of the municipality of Coburg, where that castle is at.
So that means we got people that looks like us that lives over there, that owns land.
What I'm explaining to you is that the present British Royal House, this was their capital up until 1917.
Right.
So they're not far removed from Moorish history. I mean, what I'm showing you is that in Bavaria, which is the root of the Holy Roman Empire, stop thinking Rome, because Rome is where a republic nation state existed that was not sovereign. Okay? It was not the final say of the land. It was chartered and allowed to exist by sovereigns. And it eventually got out of control, like our nation state right now is out of control. It's the same thing. There's really nothing new under the sun. It's like a time-space continuum almost. Because here in Coburg, it's like you got to recalibrate your thinking. Because, again, in the Holy Roman Empire, which is a collection of sovereign monarchs, right, and sovereign tribes come together and form coalitions and elect an emperor for a period of time, and then they elect another emperor. It's not like when you die, your son, the way they got it now, they done switched it all up. Because in that time, all of us are sovereign. We all indigenous people. You know what I mean? So we're all noble. So today you might be the emperor, tomorrow he might be the emperor, tomorrow he might be the emperor. We all nobles. Now in Bavaria is the root of the Holy Roman Empire, which is a collection of indigenous black Moors, Catholics and Protestants in Europe, centered in Bavaria. Now, again, like I said, the present British Royal House, up until 1917, was called the House of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. And their capital was Coburg. Up until World War I, when they no longer wanted people to, think that they had something involved, or they was under, had some underhanded involvement in World War I, because England is at war with Germany, and yet they're a German family. You understand? So here comes the Illuminati. We're going to get to the Illuminati question in a minute and find out that this is where Adam Weishaupt ran for sanctuary. When he was found out and they went looking for him to kill him, he went Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. You know what I'm saying? Because, again, like I said, it's all right there. It's not even like, it's just you got to recalibrate your thinking to stop thinking in terms of everything is just one big, like, put it like this. The present houses of nobility in Europe, they don't claim descendancy from the emperors of the Roman Republic. They claim to be descendants of the true indigenous nobles. They claim to have black blood flowing through their veins. They claim to be descendants of the Holy Roman Empire. You understand? Again, British Royal, because the British House. Now this is something that's interesting. I'm going to show you how tricky they are. I found that Shakespeare wrote a book called The Merry Wives of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Right? An old Shakespeare book. This is how live the family was. Once they changed their name to Windsor, the book called The Merry Wives of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha got changed to The Merry Wives of Windsor. So it was retro. You understand? So this is the kind of stuff that we're faced with. When they decided to change, when they changed their name in 1917, they made it affect a Shakespeare work from a couple of hundred years back. You understand what I'm saying? So now the Shakespeare book is called The Merry Wives of Windsor, which is an English name designed to throw you off from the fact that it's a German family. You get me? So a lot of times when we do our history, we got to pay attention to the time that we're doing the research and the context in which something may be spoken in, because the time dictates the context that something is in. So today, if we researching something, we got to be aware that, okay, at this particular time, we realize that the House of Windsor is a new name. So don't get tricked into thinking the House of Windsor is something beyond 1917. It's not. But after 1917, they try to make it retro. Get me? Because now it's easier to see, you could easier see more clearly now. But again, the Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha ended up arrested and tried as a Nazi in the 20th century. All right? From 1826 to 1918, because again, in 1917 is when they changed the name. Coburg was one of the two capitals, or the main capital, of the Duchy of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, which really is the House of Windsor. Okay? During the 19th century, dynastic marriages created ties with the royal families of Belgium, Bulgaria, Portugal, as well as Great Britain, the last being achieved when Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, born in suburban Schloss Rosenau, married his first cousin, Queen Victoria. This marriage established the present British royal house, which renamed itself Windsor during World War I. This marriage in turn led to a union with Germany's ruling dynasty, the Hohenzollerns, when the couple's eldest child, Victoria, married the future Kaiser Friedrich III. Again, Coburg is a site of all of the royal ducal weddings that bring all of the houses under one house. And it's interesting because what it appears that they're trying to do is to recreate the Holy Roman Empire the way it was, because you'll find later that at its peak, its borders encompass all of these places. So again, a lot of times when you see Caucasians doing something, they're just trying to redo something that you already did. Again, the mighty vested citadel on the mountain. Due to the royal connections, Coburg was the site of royal ducal weddings and visits. British Queen Victoria made 6 visits to Coburg during her 64-year reign. That's because she was raised in Coburg. In 1896, one ceremony brought together Queen Victoria, her son Edward, the future Edward VII, her second son Alfred, Duke of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, her daughter, the German Dowager Empress Friedrich Victoria, and many of her grandchildren, such as Tsar Nicholas and Alexandra of Russia, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany, and the future King George V of Great Britain. So it was like, this is where the family reunions take place, at Coburg, Bavaria. Okay? Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, in Coburg, situated at the capital, was the only European country to appoint a diplomatic council to the Confederate States of America during the American Civil War. The consul was named Ernst Raven, assigned to a position in the state of Texas, where George Bush and them from. So we start to see here how it all comes full circle, because Saxe-Coburg and Gotha is where the British royal house is from. It's also where they send a Confederate, a diplomatic consul to the Confederate States, okay, during the Civil War. So now your eyes start to go, you're starting to go, okay, I'm starting to see how it's all coming together. Because, again, Bavaria is where the Illuminati is born. It's where Nazis are born. Okay? And in Coburg, it's even said that Coburg was the first German town to elect a Nazi mayor.
Pardon me, Lord.
Yeah.
Now, this place right here in Bavaria is where they still have meetings to this day to add more deceit, to trick the original people, making them, they keep that crap.
Exactly, and this is why I'm trying to tell you, that place is sacred because these places are so ancient. Our ancestors built them on energy grids or ley lines. You know what I'm saying? When you see like if you go to the Alhambra and you know, you could basically, it look like a line is going across the countryside and goes right up the mountain to the Alhambra. And then it got somebody asked me something over there. Then it has like the most natural springs are found around these mountains and all of this stuff.
This is a high-powered jewel right here, because as long as we know where all the information, see this, when they trick original man to get into this palace in Coburg, that information is there. So they have to renew how we're going to keep deceiving these people. So every chance we get, they call it a big wedding. It's a meeting of the family to bring more deceit.
Oh, I'm going to show you something real interesting a little later. You're gonna be like, whoa, because it's a build-up. You know what I'm saying? But I have to try to give the lay people an understanding of sovereignty, of nobility. So I'm not losing nobody or anybody who might not be familiar with some of this stuff.
To even tie it in further, you were talking about the connection with Bush running through Texas, but his mother, Barbara Bush, is connected through the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha family.
Absolutely. Well, everybody is connected to it. If you do a because you know how when you get in Wikipedia, they have links to everything. I found a link called the line of descendancy of the British Royal House. Every name on there says Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. That is the family name. This is what I'm trying to explain. But look, this is Moorish colors right here. This is Moorish colors. You know what I'm saying? And yeah.
If you stare at that crown long enough, there's a fez underneath that crown.
Okay.
All you gotta remove is just remove all the little fancy trinkets, and you got a fez underneath that crown.
Well, everybody wear their fezzes in secret. We're going to see some very interesting relationships between Islam and the Moorish Protestant and Catholic nobility. Because again, when you go to the root, you find that they was working together. You know what I'm saying? Against a common enemy. So, again, Saxe-Coburg-Gotha we find is the only European state to appoint consul during the Civil War. But here goes another trick. At that time, Saxe-Coburg-Gotha is already inside England. So they're playing two sides of the fence again. They're playing Illuminati tricks right here. And this is why we have to be aware of our ancient history from a Catholic and Protestant perspective, because it opens up a lot of doors that was closed and a lot of information starts to come out. But again, he went right to Texas, and we already know what goes on in Texas. You know? Now we're going to get into some ancient black history in Bavaria. One of the first emperors was named Henry the Black of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, it's interesting because when you read it, they try to tell you that black meant pious. So when did black ever mean good from Europeans? They always had it meaning negative, bad, this and that. Now all of a sudden they want to tell you that black means pious. But what I found that was interesting, we had Roman emperors named, we had one emperor named Louis the Blind, right? Now, Louis went back on an oath and they plucked his eyes out. So Louis the Blind was called, he was an emperor though, but he was blind for going back on an oath because you didn't play, you noble, testify, nuts, it's real. So Louis went back on the thing and he became Louis the Blind. Then I found an emperor named Charles the Fat I found an emperor named Charles the Bald. So if they was fat, he was called, and you know how you got friends that's real dark, you call them Black. I got a few brothers named Black. You know what I'm saying? I got a brother named Vic Black. That ain't his real last name, but he's so black, we call him Black. Just like Henry the Black. You know what I mean? So here, again, like I'm showing you a lot of history so we can all just start to understand that the Holy Roman Empire was a black, indigenous, sovereign body, a collective of monarchs who came together for one common cause, and they were aided by their Arabic monarch brothers from different parts of the world too, because it was a common family relationship. Okay? Now, he was a member of the Salian dynasty of the Holy Roman Emperors, the eldest son of Conrad II of Germany and Gisela of Swabia, and his father made him Duke of Bavaria as Henry VI in 1026 after the death of Duke Henry V. Then on Easter Day, 1028, his father having been crowned Holy Roman Emperor, Henry was elected and crowned King of Germany in the Cathedral of Aachen in Pilgrim, Archbishop of Cologne. After the death of Hermann IV, Duke of Swabia in 1038, his father gave him that duchy as Henry I, as well as the kingdom of Burgundy, which Conrad had inherited in 1033. Upon the death of his father on June 4th, 1039, he became sole ruler of the kingdom and was crowned emperor by Pope Clement II in Rome. Okay? Now, there are no pictures from that time of Henry the Black, but they do have drawings now, several, like 500 years later. They started in the 15th century making drawings, and of course, they drew Henry the Black as a little puny white dude. You know what I'm saying? So again, you know, when you're doing your research, I mean, this stuff is really encoded in our DNA. So the more we go in, the more everything is going to start to pop back on.
True. Is it safe to say that when they went through that long period of book burnings and burning artwork and things of that nature, that a lot of these ancient depictions that we had of brothers and like, you know, black people in power, was that part of, you know, is it safe to say that that was part of the book burning?
Oh, absolutely. And again, like I said, you find that at Coburg is where the Protestant Reformation was started.
Yeah.
This is where the whole shaking of the Roman Empire started.
Yeah.
Now, you know who finished off the Roman Empire? Napoleon. Napoleon is the one who dismantled the Roman Empire completely.
Okay.
The Holy Roman Empire.
The Holy Roman Empire.
The Holy Roman Empire, out of Bavaria in Eastern Germany.
And then,
Now, he did that in 1806. Once I started really putting everything together, because this is another lecture for another time, but things that was happening over here around that time with Napoleon was the Louisiana Purchase. There was a dismantling, the Spanish War and the French Revolution, a lot of those wars, they overlap. So they don't, it's up to you. We have to configure history from our perspective and start to understand what's really taking place globally.
okay.
You understand?
Are you going to touch on Hitler?
Yeah, we're going to touch on Hitler. Because one of the prized badges during Hitler's reign was the Coburg crest of the Moor. Okay? And again, well, we're going to go into that later because I'm getting ahead of myself. Here we have another Henry the Black, who was a Duke of Bavaria about 100 years later. Okay? Now, he was a member of the House of Wealth. Okay? And his story is interesting because he participated in, when they was voting for the Holy Roman Empire, Emperor Lothair, this is one of the more popular emperors. When they was voting for him, he went against his son-in-law, who was married to his daughter, who was running for emperor, to vote for Lothair, who had promised to marry, who promised his daughter would marry his other son. So he was trying to look out for his son, but he was hurting his daughter's husband. So when Lothair became emperor, he banished Frederick, who was his son-in-law, and that's when he resigned because he didn't want to participate in his conviction and his trial. And that's when Henry the Black, who was Duke of Bavaria at that time, he retired to the countryside. Okay, but this is the second black or emperor, or no, he wasn't the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. He was one of the monarchs in the central hub, which is Bavaria. Okay. Also in Bavaria, in Coburg, there's a church, St. Maurice Church, where Martin Luther had, he preached there when he was filing his complaints against the papacy. Now, here's the coat of arms of Pappenheim, Bavaria. Okay? Bavaria, again, was the seat of the Holy Roman Empire, and basically, they leave all of the coats of arms intact in Bavaria for some reason. In fact, when Hitler came to power, he removed all these coats of arms, and right after after the Nazis were defeated, they put these coats of arms back up. So there must be some Caucasian Europeans who are doing their damnedest to preserve some of this history. This is the coat of arms of Pappenheim. Pappenheim is known as the imperial, as the hereditary, how do they call it? The imperial hereditary marshals of the Holy Roman Empire. Whenever you read about any war fought by the Holy Roman Empire, the generals were all Pappenheims, because you had to be a Pappenheim to be a general of the army of the Holy Roman Empire. It was a hereditary seat. So when you do your research on Pappenheim, you're going to find that Pappenheim is the seat of the hereditary imperial marshals of the German nation in the Holy Roman Empire. Okay? As you see, Pappenheim was the seat of the hereditary imperial marshals within the Holy Roman Empire. This imperial hereditary marshalship was confirmed to the marshals of Pappenheim by the Holy Roman Emperor Ludwig IV, also known as Ludwig the Bavarian. Before he was the Emperor of Rome, he was also the Duke of Bavaria. Okay, now, again, any research you do, in fact, the Crusades, even if you do research on the Crusades fought by the Holy Roman Empire, you'll find that the general or the field marshal is always named Pappenheim. Over the centuries, you'll always see Pappenheim, Pappenheim, Pappenheim. Because, again, the Holy Roman Empire, which is based on inherent nobility, is based on inheritance, bloodline. That's the key with nobility, bloodline, a connection to the land. And again, you start to realize that if all of the marshals were Pappenheims, and this is the Pappenheim family crest from the 1200s, I mean, what are you telling me? So regardless to what anybody says in any books, and if they don't want to tell us whatever, that's really not, we know, we can see for ourselves, they still got the Pappenheim family crest up, okay? And again, this is a sovereign instrument used for conveyance of mail. It's not just called a coat of arms, it's called a coat of armor and mail. Okay? On the bottom we have the Haups of Hesse. We will later see that the Haups of Hesse is where you get the Rothschilds from. So a lot of stuff we got to start to look at from different dimensions, because once we go digging, we see original people on all of the coats of arms of all of these noble families, or all of these so-called indigenous royal families. Yeah.
Every time a European conqueror try to take away all the original, what shows that a black man is God. A wise devil has to put it back there because he know that the devil's nature is wicked and destructive. And if he don't keep putting a sign so the black man can see it, there will be no way for us to save the devil from destroying the world and himself. And that's why every time somebody conquers it.
Well, they do something because when Hitler came to power, he took all of this down.
But you see, it was put
He
back
took
up.
it down, but it was put back up promptly.
That's right.
Very promptly. And this is why, you always hear stories about when black soldiers go to Germany, the women go crazy and all that. That's because they know the noble blood. They understand what nobility really means. Understand what sovereignty really means. It's inherent in your DNA, in your blood. That's why you always see twin serpents, because this is something that is inherent. You are the inheritor because you are the progenitor at the same time. You understand what I'm saying? So, again, Pappenheim, the seat of the hereditary, and they specify hereditary imperial marshals. And when you do your research, the First Crusade, the Second Crusade, any beef between any other people or anybody, you see the Pappenheims at the front. Okay? The House of Hesse. Hesse is one of the largest German states, might be the largest state, I think. This is where Frankfurt is at and all of that. And Hesse is where you get the Rothschild dynasty from. Okay? Now these Haupts here, then you find Haupts, their cousins were the ruling nobles of Transylvania. And we then find that Transylvania was paying tributary monies to the Ottomans. So we're going to start to see some interesting relationships between the Catholic and Protestant Moorish nobility and the Islamic Asiatic Moorish nobility. Okay, we see here that Pappenheim comes from the name Pappin or Papo or Pippin, meaning father or elder, who defeated the Alemanni tribe in the area. Now this appears to be two indigenous tribes at war with each other in 500 AD. Okay, that's probably why at that time they had not come together yet to form a coalition of monarchs. Okay, in 1633, during the 30 Years' War, the town and castle fell to the Swedes. 1703, during the Spanish War of Succession, the French plundered Pappenheim. The castle, however, was successfully defended. In 1704, there was repeated plundering of the town and the castle by the French. On April 30th, 1705, the French troops left Pappenheim. In 1830, the main hall or palace of the castle collapsed. The swords appearing on this page are 17th century Pappenheim rapiers. The helmets above are 17th century Pappenheim helms. Okay? 17th century is the 1600s, so this is probably right before the 30 Years' War. This is Fussen, Bavaria, and I found this interesting. Even though it didn't have a Moor's head on it, it had 3 black legs in the pyramid. And I was like, in Germany, nowadays, is nothing but real pale Caucasians. So I found this interesting. And again, I found another high castle on a mountain, because all throughout Bavaria are very, very big mountains and hills and very, very high, very tall. So again, in my opinion, all throughout Bavaria is a lot of energy centers and meridians. Okay, it says here that high castle was also built on a much more older site. And all throughout Bavaria, you'll find that all these castles, even though they date back to like 1100s, 1000s, you find much more ancient information about the sites that they were built on. Freising, Bavaria. This is another place in Bavaria where today this is the present coat of arms of Freising. This is not an old coat of arms. It's an old coat of arms, but it is still intact all throughout Bavaria. The center of the Holy Roman Empire, we find another Moorish coat of arms intact in a place where Freising was considered the center of the archdiocese of the Holy Roman Empire. This is an image of Saint Corbinius. Saint Corbinius is the patron saint of the Holy Roman Empire. Okay? Oh. He's the patron saint of the Holy Roman Empire. He founded Freising. They tell you, that Saint Corbinius founded Freising in, I think it was the late 900s. Now there's a very interesting story about Saint Corbinius. He was supposed to be on his way to the Alps, through the Alps, those big mountains. And a pack of wild bears attacked his horse and killed his horse. And he was supposed to be so spiritual and so in tune that he somehow made the bear carry his luggage and ride him over the Alps, you know what I'm saying, to where he had to go. And all throughout Eastern Europe, this story was, told for hundreds of years that Saint Corbinius was able to make a wild bear submit to his will and carry him and his luggage to where he had to go, and then he let the bear go. So this is the story of Saint Corbinius. Now, your boy Cardinal Ratzinger, who's or Pope Benedict as he's called now, he used to be the bishop of Freising, Bavaria. Okay? So he was the Archbishop and Cardinal of Freising, Bavaria before he became the Pope. And this is his coat of arms when he was the Cardinal of Freising, Bavaria. Of course, it had a Moor's head, and it had the bear who St. Corbinius, in this picture, made carry him and all his belongings to where he had to go. So this is Cardinal Ratzinger. This is his coat of arms when he was the Cardinal of Freising. But what's interesting, and what you got to keep in mind, is that he was a Nazi youth. And at that time, you didn't have a choice. All the children in Germany was Nazi youth. All the children in Bavaria especially. So it must be interesting. You got to imagine, for someone like this, growing up with all of this Moorish, noble information in your face, and then at the same time, this is where all this hatred is being born. This is where all of this, violence is taking place. And it's real interesting, but I think something is up with the Cardinal himself. You know what I mean? I think something is up with him, because it almost seems as if what they're trying to do is recreate the Holy Roman Empire and now put the Cardinal from Bavaria back in the seat of the Archdiocese, even though the Vatican wasn't part of the Archdiocese of the Holy Roman Empire. But he was the Cardinal of the Archdiocese.
It's not the tree of life.
Huh?
It's not the tree of life like this.
Indeed so. Yep. Now, this kind of looks crazy because it almost looks like this, like his collar has two horns right here. You see it? When I saw the picture, I said, "Why they took a picture?" You know what I'm saying? With the horns sticking out like that. But he do look a little weird. And over here, he looks like he's just zapping the energy from his young sister right here. But
He looks like the Emperor from Star Wars.
yeah, he looked like, yeah. Right?
City.
This is another variation of his coat of arms. This one, the more, even got dreads and look real original right there. You know what I'm saying? Now we're going to break down a little bit of the coat of arms of the Pope and see what's going on here. Okay? First, we're going to deal with the phallium or the phallus symbol, this thing that's draped from the bottom of the shield. The use of the white phallium with the red crosses draped below the shield is a new addition to the papal coat of arms. It represents episcopal authority, the special kind of jurisdiction that is reserved to metropolitan archbishops in their province and to the Pope universally in the church. That don't make no sense. The Pope is supposed to be dealing with abstinence, and here you got him talking about this little penis here represents the special kind of jurisdiction that's reserved to metropolitan archbishops. Don't sound right to me. What is called the Plenitudo Pontificalis Officii, the plenitude of pontifical office. The style of phallium shown on the coat of arms with either red or black crosses on a narrow band of wool is what is commonly known from the second millennium. At his inaugural mass, Pope Benedict wore an older style of pallium. Notice he wore an older style, broad with red crosses and hanging down from the left shoulder, rather than in the middle. This style is more typically of the first millennium and is similar to the Omophorian, representing episcopal authority in the Eastern Church. So right there, what they're actually saying is that he is more in line with the old Holy Roman Empire form of dress, when it was seated in the eastern part of Europe, in Germany. Okay? Now we're going to deal with the cross keys right here. The cross keys, two cross keys symbolize the powers Christ gave to the Apostle Peter and to his successors. And this is all dealing with law and jurisprudence. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Matthew 16:19. The gold key represents the power to bind in heaven, and the silver key, spiritual authority on earth. The two keys are united by the cord, again indicating their essential unity in Peter and his successors. The Kaput Ethiopian. According to the website, now, when I first saw that, I thought kaput meant kaput, like finito, done for. But in all actuality, kaput means the head or governing body of something. So this is where you get the word capitul from, or caputo. You know? What's interesting is if you spell it backwards, you get Tupac.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? It means the head or governing aspect of something. So again, they understand that even through the mental death and all of the despair of the original man, he's still the governing head. You know, it is what it is. And royalty actually means, from one dimension, it means that you're the only real or organic being. You know, royal comes from the Latin real or real. So royalty also means that you are an organic being. Your body has sufficient biochemistry to maintain itself through all of the shifts of the earth and all of the different things that go on. Everyone else is temporary. And so that's why you're the inheritor and the progenitor. So The Kaput Ethiopium, according to the website of his former archdiocese, the shield, which is divided into 3 sections, displays the Moor of Friesing. The Moor's head facing left and typically crowned appeared on the coat of arms of the old Principality of Friesing as early as 1316, during the reign of the Bishop of Friesing, Prince Conrad III, and it remained almost unchanged until the secularization of the church's estates in that region in 1802, 1803. Ever since that time, the archbishops of Munich and Friesing have included the Kaput Ethiopium, the head of an Ethiopian, in their episcopal coat of arms. Okay? What's interesting is a lot within the Holy Roman Empire, a noble could be a duke or he could be a bishop. You know? It kind of reminds me of the difference that some Moors go through with other Moors by claiming that they're too religious or too much Islamism. You know how brothers, oh, that's too much Islamism, man. So, but it's, you know, it's different ways that indigenous people go about doing their things, but we still are one family. This is the Swiss Guard, the mercenary army that protects the Pope. This is their coat of arms. This is the head of the Swiss Guard's personal coat of arms. And whenever you see that, a little axe like that, that's the sign to let you know you're dealing with fascists. Okay? And in all my research of coats of arms, the first time I saw an axe in anybody's coat of arms was in Napoleon's coat of arms. That's the first time I saw an axe. Then I started seeing them everywhere. So he was ushering in the fascist state. Again, he's the one who dismantled the Holy Roman Empire. And this is the coat of arms of Italy under Napoleon. This is the coat of arms of Pt3 in Bavaria. Again, this is present coat of arms. And Bavaria is where all our history is intact because that is the seat, and this is where the present nobility of Europe claims its descendancy. Again, from out of Bavaria. Pt3 is a municipality in the district of Erding. Okay? What's interesting again, it says down here that where it's built, it's established around 1400 in a place of a far older and smaller church. When you do the research on all these places in Bavaria, you find that wherever the castle was built, there's all
With King Arthur and all that, right?
well, that's it's rooted in Bavaria. I think King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table came out of England. There was a time you had, again, you had one Roman Republic, and then you had a Roman Empire, but it was almost like as if while the Roman Republic was doing its thing, the empire wasn't together. And then the Republic got out of hand. And then what's interesting is you have Islamic nobility coming in to check the Republic. You have the Ottomans coming in. So it's like we're working together against a common enemy because we're all nobles. So in Europe, you had the Roman Republic that got so out of hand, the Ottomans came in and regulated them. But they regulated them for their brothers, who were Catholic and Protestant, and who reestablished themselves as nobles. As a matter of fact, they came and helped them up, because here you find, I think this is where you find lime trees at, all around, is it past that? But we know that the Moors in the 7th century brought in limes and lemons. So we know that they went to their brothers and helped build their palaces for them. Because again, we know that when we look at some of the palaces in Europe at a time when the Arabic numeral system wasn't supposed to be in use, because the numbers 1 through 9 and 0 are called Arabic numbers. Okay? They were brought into Europe by Moors. At a time when Arabic numbers were not the standard use in Europe, you have all these castles being built. So who was building the castles? It was Arabic people building them for their cousins. In fact, they came into Europe and dismantled the Roman Republic, which had got way out of control. Okay? This is Garmisch, Bavaria. Okay? What's interesting about Garmisch is that it's located in the Bavarian Alps and includes the highest mountain of Germany, the Zugspitze, 2,962 miles high. The highest peaks are grouped along the Austrian border by a river called the Osar River. You know, it's amazing. It's a river called the Osar River. And here we have, this is in Bavaria, in the place where the highest mountain peak is at. And this is still the coat of arms to this day. Okay, this is another variation of it. I found this one kind of interesting because again, now you can see like dreads and locks right there. Okay, now we're going to delve into some Islamic nobility and its original relationship to European nobility. Remember, I told you that the Ottomans came in and shut down the Roman Republic when they got out of hand. So we're getting ready to get into some interesting stuff with Islamic nobility. Okay? The research I was doing was crazy because I was finding stuff. It was just so much stuff. I found this brother named Averroes, or this is the name that they call him. His name is actually Abdul Walid Muhammad Ibn Rashid.
It's Rushdie. They pronounce it Rushdie.
They spell it Rashid like that. But it's Rashid. That's Rashid. Right? That's how I see it. That's you. That's an aspect of you. Now, he was the great commentator. And what's amazing about this brother, he wrote so much, all right, right here. He wrote, he wrote over 20 books on medicine alone. Okay? This is the brother that when you do research, you find that they plagiarized so many works that he wrote. You can't get none of his works in Arabic now. You can only get them in Jewish translations, Latin translations, French translations. So here you have a person who, when you really do your research, you find that he is responsible for giving them mad sciences. Mad science dealing with astrology, everything, okay? He commented that Islam aims at true knowledge, which is knowledge of God and his creations. This knowledge of us and everything that we create. This true knowledge also includes knowing the various means that lead to worldly satisfaction and avoidance of misery in the hereafter. This type of practical knowledge covers two branches: jurisprudence, which deals with the material or tangible aspect of human life, the spiritual science, which deal with matters, and the spiritual science which deal with matters like patience, gratitude to God, and morals. He compared spiritual laws to medicine in their effect on human beings physically on one hand, and morally and spiritually on the other. He pointed out that spiritual health is termed taqwa in the Quran.
Taqwa means oneness.
Ibn Rashid, or reconciling of paradoxes, made remarkable contributions in philosophy, logic, medicine, music, and jurisprudence. He was a judge, by the way, in Cordoba when he was real young. They made him a judge. And his father was a judge, and his grandfather was a judge. And then he started studying everything, philosophy. He was the one that gave the Europeans all of the commentaries on Aristotle, Pythagoras, all of that. Okay? And when you start researching, you'll find the name Averroes so that they can cover up the Islamic name.
Right.
But even when they use the Averroes, you can't find nothing in the original script. You know? And they tell you that most of his works have been plagiarized.
He's one of the troubadours, right?
And he was from the Moravid dynasty.
And isn't Averroes the one that brought romantic literature into Europe?
He's credited with some of that as well. Here we're going to get into some really interesting stuff. This is the coronation mantle of the Holy Roman Empire. This is what is worn every time a new emperor is about to take his seat. Beautiful, but let's find out what's really unique about this mantle right here. The precious mantle embroidered with gold, pearls, and cloisonne enamel plaque was part of the coronation set of robes used at the coronations of the kings and emperors of the Holy Roman Empire. These precious robes were made by Arab artisans. They bear Arabic inscriptions on the coronation garb of the Holy Roman Emperor. This is showing you that the Moors or the Islamic nobles were helping their Catholic and Protestant brothers out. They made the coronation garb? This is definitely a Moorish empire here. And a lot of the information has been suppressed, but not enough. Okay? These precious robes were made by Arab artisans for the Norman kings on Sicily in the 12th and 13th centuries and passed to the German house of Hohenstaufen. This unique coronation mantle of heavy red silk is richly embroidered with gold stitching and tens of thousands of pearls. It is semicircular and was locked with a clasp decorated with precious stones and enamel. The Arabic inscription on the lower hem of the mantle tells us the date of the production at the Royal Workshop in Palermo in 528 according to Islamic chronology, corresponding to the Christian year 1133-1134. Thus, this robe was made for Roger II of Sicily. Okay? Again, this is right around the time that the Holy Roman Empire is starting to get back on the scene, get back, you know what I mean? And this is right around the time when you already had the Ottomans come in and shut down the Roman Republic, and you had the Moors come in Spain and shut down all the nonsense over there as well. So it appears to me that the Holy Roman Empire, which was originally Moorish, had no conflict or is totally at odds with the way history reports the occupation of Spain by Moors or the occupation of Hungary and Austria by the Ottomans and so forth. The Oriental motifs are borrowed from Arabic art, two symmetrically, because in Europe and at this time, you got to remember, Oriental and Asiatic and Arabic are all considered one, or Eastern. The Oriental motifs are borrowed from Arabic art, two symmetrically endorsed back to back. Lions triumph over a camel. Between them, like a stylized palm tree, is the tree of life. The lions symbolize the ruler who defeats his foes because of the preciousness of the mantle. The kings and emperors of the Holy Roman Empire, ignoring the foreign motifs, had used it as a coronation mantle since the 13th century. In the 14th century, it was believed that the mantle belonged to Charlemagne. Now notice, in the 14th century is when they start to rewrite history after they get rid of the Moors. So what they do is, they try to create a rumor that Charlemagne won it from the Moors in battle. But then the truth comes out that it was actually bestowed upon the Italians as a gift. So right there, you see a conflict with the way they try to give you the story of history right there. Now let's go check out the Ottoman Empire for a minute, because we really don't pay too much attention to the Ottomans, but when I did the research, I found a lot of interesting stuff on the Ottoman Empire. Definitely Moorish Empire. This is a picture of the Ottomans coming into Constantinople and shutting down the Roman Republic. Okay? Now, even though this is hundreds of years after the fact, they still got Moors in there, and even a brother on a horse is a Moor. And then you got another darker Moor right here. But they went into Constantinople, an official empire of sovereigns, and shut down a nation state that was out of control. What's up, bro?
I just want to ask, is there any reason why it kind of looks like the Haitian flag?
The what?
The Haitian flag.
Haitian flag?
The symbol in the middle.
That looks like the Haitian flag?
Exactly like that. Yes.
Well, you know, those are Moors here too. See, what we got to realize is our empire was global sovereigns all over the world. You know, and the Ottomans ruled the seas, bro, for a while. They was in charge of the water for a while.
The real pirates.
They had them under pressure. These is pirates right here. They were straight up pirates of the Caribbean, like you said. That's back down to Haiti. You know what I mean? So it's up to us to start looking a little deeper into Haiti, start looking at synchronicity, synergy, anything that's, coming together, because it's all in front of our face. It's like, this information is sitting right there, like, come get it. You know what I'm saying? Now the Ottomans, again, straight up Moors. The first Ottoman emperor, he wasn't called the emperor, he was called just simply Osman Bey. And Bey is a title that's first used by the Ottomans and the Persians, who were Moors. Okay? When I did the research, the first three rulers of the Ottoman realm were titled Bey. The chief sovereign of the Ottoman Empire only came to be called Sultan starting in 1383, when, what's this? Murad, that sounds like a Moor, the first was granted this title by the Shadow Caliph. Who the fuck is the Shadow Caliph? It's like when you doing your research, on these pages, everything had little links to it. But they ain't have no link for the Shadow Caliph. They just said, it was a Shadow Caliph that got them started calling themselves sultans, because they all called themselves Bey. Okay, Bey is a Turkish word for chieftain. The term is of Sogdian origin and is traditionally applied to the leaders of small tribal groups. In historical accounts, many Turkish and Persian leaders are titled Bey, Bey, or Bey. They are all the same word with the simple meaning of Lord. The regions or provinces where Beys, equivalent of duke in Europe, ruled or which they administered were called Beylik, roughly meaning emirate or principality in the first case, province or governorate in the second. Today the word is a social title for men, like the English word Mr. What I also found is that when they also now in Turkey, they starting to use Bey in a derogatory way. So where it used to mean chieftain and stuff, now they on some real funny with the Bey right now, because they know that that's part of our ancient history.
And that last Bey, just reverse B, the E and the I is beige, which is brown.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Under Salim and Suleiman, the empire became a dominant naval force controlling much of the Mediterranean Sea. The exploits of the Ottoman Admiral Barbarossa, Hayreddin Pasha, who commanded the Turkish Navy during Suleiman's reign, led to a number of military victories over Christian navies. Among these were the conquest of Tunis and Algeria from Spain. And check this, the evacuation of Muslims and Jews from Spain to the safety of Ottoman lands, particularly Salonika, Cyprus, and Constantinople during the Spanish Inquisition. So during the Spanish Inquisition, when they was killing the original Sephardic Jews, who was all black, in Spain, Ottoman brothers was coming to their aid. You know what I'm saying? The Ottomans, again, as we could see, they the ones that came and shut down the Roman nation state when it got out of hand. So this was like, this was our military. These brothers, you can see, they got gats in their joint. They even got some axes in there. They came in like, all right, whatever you could do, I could do better. And they was just tearing shit up. So, yeah.
So, is there any correlation with the beginning of World War I with this Ottoman? With the
Absolutely.
Ottoman
During World War I is the dismantling of the Ottoman Empire, and it's when Britain, Saxe-Coburg and Gotha now set up the artificial nation states of Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Syria. That whole region is artificial, and it's all been created in World War I after the Ottoman dismantle. Exactly. The Ottoman was regulating everything until right before World War I, when they had a ruler come in. We get ready to get to
So
him.
that's basically the continuation of the dismantling of the Moorish Empire. That was like
That was the last phase, not Spain. Spain wasn't the last phase. The last phase was the Ottoman Empire.
No, I know. I mean, I'm just concurring with you.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think the real last war was when they invaded, when Mussolini ran up in Ethiopia. That was like the ceiling, because that was...
The Ottomans had went in, they took Egypt back, they took Ethiopia back. The Ottomans had everything smashed for a while. But what they do is they come in with so-called nationalist propaganda.
Yeah.
And they stir up a lot of dissension amongst the people. You know, revolutions. We see that they were instigating the Civil War here, the same people that instigated the Protestant Revolution. Same Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, same shit, different day. You know what I'm saying? Same family, same Royal House of Britain, which is the center for all of the houses of Europe. We just went through how all of the houses of Europe are tied to the Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. And what we find out later is that since it's really the House of Wettin, we find that this plan has been part of the monarchs, because when we get to the Illuminati in a minute, right, you're going to get a quote out of, there's a quote in Cosmic Trigger. You ever heard of Cosmic Trigger? It's a famous book. Well, in Cosmic Trigger, they talk about how the Illuminati purpose was to overthrow all the kings of Europe. Well, how could the Illuminati purpose be to overthrow the kings of Europe when the kings of Europe are involved in it? That means that the so-called kings of Europe are not the real kings of Europe. You understand? The real kings of Europe are the Moorish nobility that we're looking at right now. The Holy Roman Empire. And they're sitting in our seat right now. So, again, they're not destabilizing themselves. They're perpetuating the destabilization of our empire. But again, we can't blame them because they inherited our corruption. I'm one that deals with accountability. And I don't really like placing blame outside of self. And being indigenous and noble, we do realize and have to realize that we are accountable for everything. You know what I mean? And we really just getting bit in the ass from shit that we did. Shit that we was doing. Okay? But this was deep. Because they never tell you in history about the Ottomans coming in Spain and regulating shit. Right? And it's a lot of extensive history on the Moors that escaped, Sephardic Jews and Moors that escaped persecution during the Spanish Inquisition. Okay, Suleiman the Magnificent further expanded upon Salim's conquest and captured Belgrade in 1521. Suleiman conquered the Kingdom of Hungary and established Ottoman rule in the territory of present-day Hungary and other Central European territories. After his victory in the Battle of Mohacs in 1526, he then laid siege to Vienna in 1529, but failed to take the city after the onset of winter forced his retreat. In 1532, another planned attack on Vienna with an army thought to be over 250,000 strong was repulsed 60 miles south of Vienna at the Fortress of Guns. After further advances by the Ottomans in 1543, the Habsburg ruler Ferdinand officially recognized Ottoman ascendancy. This is who he was at beef with. They finally said, we recognize your right to sovereign authority on these lands. Okay? During the reign of Suleiman, Transylvania. Now, Transylvania is where the Haups, which is another black noble family, were in control for a long time. And when you look at the Haups coat of arms later, you'll see Turkish-looking faces and Moorish faces together. So, again, this is where the Ottomans were in control. So they had Transylvania paying them tributary monies. They became tributary principalities of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans took Baghdad from the Persians in 1535, gaining control of Mesopotamia and naval access to the Persian Gulf. Okay? This is the crown of Stefan Boxty. This is German for Stefan. Okay? What's interesting about this crown, again, this crown was made by the Ottoman Sultan and given to the prince by him. Now there was a little discrepancy over who actually had the right to nobility, whether it was the Habsburgs or Boxty. But again, the Ottomans, who had always been at war with the Habsburgs, recognized Boxty as the true noble of the land, and they offered him this beautiful crown and also a Persian robe, a silk robe. Let's see. As the crowns were not in use in the Ottoman Empire, the motto was the Orthodox bishop's mitre of metal, which descended from the Byzantine closed bonnet-like headdress. The crown is comprised of two main parts, broad circlet with a wreath of fleurs de lis and the closed spherical helmet rising from it. Again, that's like a fez too. The crown is richly set with precious stones of varying size and quality. The frontal lily bears a Greek cross decorated with pearls and a ruby. It refers to the fact that Boxty, who had until then been loyal to the emperor, had turned away from Rudolph II for religious reasons. Maybe he became Islamic. The Habsburg had been the nominal kings of Hungary since 1526, but large parts of the country remained under the control of the Turks to the end of the 18th century. The counter-reformatory policies of the Habsburgs caused great resistance, especially in Transylvania. The Calvinist aristocrats Stefan Botsky was elected Prince of Transylvania in 1605. He was recognized as such by Sultan Muhammad I, who was at war with Emperor Rudolf II and sent Botsky this crown. In 1606, the Peace of Vienna was signed, guaranteeing religious freedom. In the same year, peace was signed with the Turks in Zitvakstorok. After the death of Botsky and the coronation of Emperor Matthias as King of Hungary in 1609, the crown was brought to Vienna together with the cover of Persian silk. This is Mahmud II. Now, this is the cat that started the modernization of Turkey by preparing the Edict of Tanzimat in 1839, which had immediate effects such as European-style clothing, European agricultural innovations, Western weapons, agriculture, legislation, institutional organization, and land reform. So this was the beginning of the end. He was like a double agent. Fez on and everything. He wasn't really... This is the departure of Mehmed VI, the last sultan of the Ottoman Empire. He's being saluted as he stepped down and left the palace. Now we're going to deal with the Illuminati and its relationship to Europe's nobility. Now the Cosmic Trigger, like I said, okay, which is a very well-known book. It says, briefly, the background of the Bavarian Illuminati puzzle is this. On May 1st, 1776, in Bavaria, Dr. Ida Weishaupt, a professor of canon law at Ingolstadt University and a former Jesuit, formed a secret society called the Order of the Illuminati within the existing Masonic lodges of Germany. Since Masonry is itself a secret society, the Illuminati was a secret society within a secret society. A mystery inside a mystery, so to say. In 1785, the Illuminati were suppressed by the Bavarian government for allegedly plotting to overthrow all the kings in Europe and the Pope to boot. This much is generally agreed upon by all historians. Everything else is a matter of heated and somewhat fetid controversy. Again, like I said, when you get to the bottom of it, you find that it is the kings of Europe who are at the root of the Illuminati. So how are they trying to overthrow themselves? No. They're trying to keep the indigenous sovereign people from asserting their position. Okay? So, let's see, Illuminati 101. In 1785, on March 2nd, the Bavarian monarch issued the second edict against secret societies, specifically naming the Illuminati and Freemasonry. Shortly after, a considerable amount of important documents were concealed or put to the flames. This second ban was more forceful. It left no room for evasion. The government and forces were given weapons to wage an effective command. Weishaupt had already left his post at the university 2 weeks earlier, obviously knowing about the approaching storm. He fled across the border to Regensburg and finally settled at Gotha under the protection of Illuminati member Duke of Saxe-Gotha. 13 years later, Barrow writes, Weishaupt, now banished from his country as a traitor to his prince and to the whole universe, peacefully at the court of Ernest Louis, Duke of Saxe-Gotha, enjoys an asylum, receives a pension from the public treasury, and is dignified with the title of honorary chancellor to that prince. Same kind of thing like with Martin Luther. They're sponsored by these pseudo-nobles to basically keep up the hoax, keep the fraud going, okay? Summary and additional Moorish history. Now, basically, I would hope that everybody was able to put together a lot of things that seemed like they wasn't connected, like the fact that you had Saxe-Coburg and Gotha sending consuls to the Confederate States during the Civil War. You also have, at Coburg is the same place where Martin Luther starts the Protestant Reformation, which is synonymous with the German Revolution and the beginning of the destabilization of the Holy Roman Empire. That Napoleon was the one who finally brought an end to the Holy Roman Empire, at which time only one electorate survived, and that was Saxony. Saxony was a small electorate in the Holy Roman Empire, but after its dissolution, Saxony becomes a kingdom. So they must have had something to do. Napoleon promoted Saxony from a small electorate to a kingdom. So obviously they had something to do with the destabilization of the Roman Empire. Also, a lot of other things came clear to me, and I hope they would have came clear to you, such as the connection of Islam with the Holy Roman Empire, the fact that the coronation mantles was created by Moors, the fact that the Ottoman rulers also enjoyed good relationships with other Christian, and because Spain, France, England, and Germany united with the Ottoman Empire against Spain at one point. So there's a lot of things that, you know, conflict with the way history is presented to us. The fact that the Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha was also arrested and tried as a Nazi not too long ago. So these things are all coming clearer as we look at this Holy Roman Empire and realize what true sovereignty is, and the fact that it's rooted in the indigenous family and the indigenous people of the land. This is the Haupt clan of Hesse. Again, Hesse, when you do your research, and when I did the research into the Illuminati, I found that the Rothschilds are part of this dynasty here. These are the Haupts of Transylvania. Now this is interesting because, again, Transylvania was under the rule of the Ottomans, who we know came to the aid of the indigenous people before. And here we have Haupts of Hesse with Moorish heads, and this looks a little more like a Turkish man here. So we see the Haupt von Segenfeld, and we see the Haupts of Hesse. Okay, and remember, the Haupts were the ruling noble class of Transylvania. It's another Haupt's coat of arms. This is St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican. What's interesting here is they have Moors here, but they also have, like this guy here, because you can zoom in close on these images, and you'll see European features, but then you'll see Moorish features on the other guy. And, you know, they try to, being that they used a dark colored stone or whatever they were carving from, they made everybody the same color. But clearly, you have Moors there, and then you have some dark-skinned European features there as well. This is a picture I took myself when I went to Spain on a fact-finding mission to do some Moorish research. And this is in the Royal Palace in Madrid, the Christian monarch's palace. Now, this is to me kind of bugged, because the Habsburgs are supposed to be the original nobles of Spain. and Austria. And yet, these Moors are laying down the coats of arms in that palace in the royal. This room is where all the thrones are at. So I found it interesting because they didn't get rid of this fresco in the ceiling, and they're laying down the coats of arms. Yeah, they got some Europeans with them helping them, but they are still at the helm. And I don't know if it was that relationship. And this looks like a Islamic turban right here. So this is something that, you know, is a little unexplainable to me. But again, even in Spain, we see that the original coats of arms was laid down by Moors. This is a picture also in the Royal Palace in Spain of a probably a Spaniard of mixed origin. Looks like, you know, like got a little afro or whatever. He kind of reminds me of Medici, Alexandro de Medici. This is Saint Zeno of Verona. This is just images, a few images of Moorish information that I really didn't have a lot of knowledge about, but I just found it interesting about this saint in Verona in 300 AD. Okay, it was said that his birth date is controversial, but is placed sometime in the early 4th century in Mauritania near Algiers, North Africa. It's not clear whether there were 2 or more separate men with the same name, because the dates don't match his name with the inscription under this statue do not match the dates on record for the Bishop of Verona at that time. So a lot of history has been distorted. This is a coat of arms found in Verona, Italy. Saraceni. Kind of sounds like Saracens. Corsica, Italy. Now when you get to Corsica, they try to say that the bandana is a representative of a slave that, you know, got freed, or this is to commemorate the freedom of the Moors. That's all a bunch of crap. We already know that the Moors are the indigenous nobles of every part of the planet. Sardinia, Italy. These are all present coats of arms still in effect to this day. The Medici family, people who commissioned Michelangelo and everybody. Alessandro de Medici, the first Duke of Florence. In 1492, he was ran out of Florence at the same time that the Moors were being expelled from Spain. And it's interesting because he was reinstated by the Holy Roman Emperor and the General Pappenheim, who came in and regulated the Habsburgs and everybody, and reinstated, conquered the city, and backed the installment of Alessandro de Medici as the first Duke of Florence. So here again, now what's interesting again, here we have at a time where it's a lot of mixing going on, okay, because we don't get a chance to see any pictures of his other relatives or how they looked or whatever, but he was called the Moor, and his family was an Italian family of merchants, bankers, rulers, patrons, and collectors. They dominated the political and cultural life of Florence. Members of his family were also Holy Roman Emperors. Members of his family were also archbishops of Freising, Bavaria, the archdiocese of the Bavarian Holy Roman Empire. This is a cameo portrait of Alessandro de Medici at the museum. Here we have a plate, Pesaro, Italy, about 1540. Okay, notice the Moor coat of arms up here. In the upper left section of the plate is Cardinal Antonio Pucci's shield. Okay, this was the cardinal at that time. And Antonio was created cardinal in 1531 and adopted by Pope Clement VII. Giulio de Medici. Again, as I showed you, the Medici family, they were a very powerful family, and they had people who were popes, bishops, and emperors. At the urging of his uncle, Cardinal Lorenzo Pucci, this explains why the shield contains the Medici balls on the left and the Moor's head device of the Pucci family on the right, surmounted by the cardinal's hat. Okay, that brings the presentation to an end. I want to thank everybody for being patient and
All right, get it, brother True Master, one more black man. That's all, y'all. Thank you for any questions?
Real quick, is it possible, would you be interested in emailing out the PowerPoint?
That's why the honorary, it's honorary. You have to get tapped to get the 33rd degree, but once you get to the 32nd, you can wear a fez. You can be Islamic. You can take on the name L. You can get your L. This is the white boy's way of becoming a fucking Moor.
Hey, Rashid.
Peace.
Hey, you see that movie in chat with the birds in it?
I haven't seen it yet.
Saw that they had the birds in it, played by brother.
Okay.
I mean,
That's the same stuff.
Now check this out. Look at this. You see these books up here?
Oh, that's
Oh, who said that?
That's Blavatsky. That's right.
somebody that got fucking books. You know. When I see those is the whole theosophical joints. It's right there. So I'm looking at his joints. He ain't got as many books as me. But who knows what's on the shelf if he's just got reference books? Okay? So now, this is another biggie. I said, whoa, this is a real magical cracker.
And you know,
Hold up.
quirks and weird shit.
Now what the hell is that? Magic, white and black. Huh? He went in on it.
What does it say right there?
Look, it says it says para brown. It's I wish Dawood was here. Dawood knows shit like this.
He's right outside.
He is?
Yeah, he's outside.
Well, we gotta ask him what this para brown means because he always speaks.
you know what I'm saying, go and do the knowledge yourself, and you'll find a lot of information. I couldn't cover a lot of things because I tried to keep everything a little focused. On the left, we have the coat of arms. Now, what's interesting is that the coats of arms of municipalities that I'm going to show you today are still all in effect. They're not like, you know, from the 1300s, and they're not in effect right now. These are actually the coats of arms that are still over all these different municipalities. Okay, now also I found a lot of Catholic and Protestant Moorish nobility, and it would seem almost as if they started getting into conflict with each other, and it wasn't so much that Caucasians destroyed the empire. It was more or less a lot of inward fighting amongst the families. I called it Europa because Europa is actually the original name of Europe, for those that don't know. It's named after an African queen who was kidnapped by Zeus, who took the form of a bull and went into Africa, North Africa, kidnapped her and rode her back to Crete. He then proceeded to rape her and gave her 3 children. To this day, any major law that's passed in Europe is called a bull. And this is just a commemorative coin commemorating the signing of the Constitution, which brought Europe together as one body, sort of like a United States of Europe. Okay, the lecture outline is going to initially deal with sovereignty, familiarizing any of y'all who are not familiar with what sovereignty is and what it's really rooted in. Then we're going to deal with the Holy Roman Empire versus the Roman Empire. And doing my research, I discovered that there was 2 Roman empires. In school, they really only teach you about one Roman empire. The Roman Empire that they teach you about actually was not an empire at all because it didn't have a coat of arms. Okay, it actually was a republic, a nation state, which was given permission to exist by the sovereign empire called the Holy Roman Empire, which in fact was a Moorish empire. So, again, you got to keep in mind that you have two Roman empires. So when you do your research, remember, holy in the 5% lessons, we learn that whenever you use the word holy, it's something that's made or grown from the beginning. And here is the same thing is relevant, because the Holy Roman Empire is in fact the Moorish Empire, and we will get into that in a minute. Bavaria, we're going to cover Bavaria in depth. Most of the lecture is going to deal with Bavaria. Now, most of us really never heard of Bavaria until we hear about the Illuminati, we hear about Adam Weishaupt, we hear about Hitler and the Nazis, all starting in Bavaria. And it never really occurred to me that right in the place where they would begin all of their madness is right where most of our history is at, and it's still intact. Then we're going to deal with Islamic nobility and its original relationship with Europe's Christian, Catholic, and Protestant nobility. And it'll be a totally different picture from what history paints, as far as the Muslims being barbarians and coming in and destroying stuff. Okay, then we're going to deal with the Illuminati and its relationship to European nobility. And finally, we're going to summarize everything and just go into a little additional Moorish history. Sovereignty and the basis for nobility. Sovereignty is the exclusive right to have complete control over an area of governance, people, or oneself. A sovereign is the supreme law-making authority, subject to no other. What you got to keep in mind is that nobility is rooted in heredity, in bloodline, and it's rooted in one's connection to a landmass. So it's kind of like, for those who are familiar with the fact that when European settlers came here, it was indigenous sovereign Moors who gave them the charter to do business. It was pretty much the same thing in Europe. Okay? And you always had the sovereign overseeing and being the final say in everything that went on in Europe. And the way they teach you in history is totally different, because they don't really tell you about the indigenous sovereign empire of indigenous Moors, but we're going to get into that. And it's extensive history that's dealing with that. Okay, national sovereignty is of an eternal origin, such as nature or a god, legitimating the divine right of kings and absolute monarchies or a theocracy. All right, the Holy Roman Empire versus the Roman Empire. This is the coat of arms of the Holy Roman Empire. Again, the Holy Roman Empire, as you will see, is a Moorish empire. They have the two black eagles back to back, and this dates back to about the 11th century. Interestingly, after the fall of the Roman Empire, which was the Republic, and when you start doing the history, you realize the fall of the Roman Empire was done by the Ottoman Empire. Now, when we study Moorish history in Europe, we tend to overlook the Ottomans, who were Moors as well, and it's a lot of our history inside the Ottoman history. We're going to get into the Ottoman history as well. Okay, the German practice of electing monarchs, because nobility is inherent in all of us. So the Holy Roman Empire was basically a coalition of sovereign people who came together to elect an emperor to basically be the head for a certain period of time, but it wasn't based on hereditary descendancy, like if I die, my son becomes the emperor and nobody else get a chance to be the emperor. So this was basically a collection of ancient Germanic tribes that formed a coalition and elected leaders thereof. Elections were regularly held by the Franks, whose successor states included France and Germany. The French monarchy eventually became hereditary. When they say hereditary, they still mean that, see, the French still participated in the Holy Roman Empire, so they still participated in elections, but at the same time, within France, the monarch, it more or less, you know, started to, and also, the times where these things start to change is when they start to marry into a lot of Caucasians, and a lot of the original laws and everything was abandoned over time. But they still held elections where, as a collective body of monarchs or sovereigns, they would elect an emperor of Rome. And again, you got to keep in mind that the Holy Roman Empire, 17th century. That's about the time when the Roman Empire started to, the Holy Roman Empire started to fall. Okay? I Googled, once I realized it was two Roman empires, I Googled the coat of arms of the Roman Empire, and in the Wikipedia, they got it just like this. They got a question mark, because there's no coat of arms for the Roman Empire, because a coat of arms is actually a sovereign instrument for conveying law and basically, put it like this, a coat of arms is actually called a coat of armor and mail. The real name is it's abbreviated as coat of arms. It's actually called a coat of armor and mail, and it was used by sovereigns to convey law, so, and post. So the Roman Empire was never sovereign. Despite what they may tell you in your history books, or they may call its rulers emperors, it was not an imperial state, and it was not recognized as such in history, and still not recognized as such in history. And all you got to do is recalibrate your mind to really see through all of the trickery that they do. Because again, the Roman Empire really wasn't an empire. It was a nation state, and it was given a charter, and when it got out of line, a sovereign empire came in, the Ottomans, and shut it down. Moors. Okay? Roman Empire versus the Holy Roman Empire. Again, like I said, Charlemagne, who was the first emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, and again, any pictures you see on Charlemagne, when I did my research, I found that all of the paintings on Charlemagne was at least 400 years after his death. So you can't really go on any pictures that you see of Charlemagne, because that's probably not him. You know what I'm saying? That's how I look at it. Well, I think our challenge now is to really define our position in history, and basically, you know, define how we see everything from our perspective. Empire is not the Roman Empire that you were taught about in school with Julius Caesar and all of them. In fact, the Holy Roman Empire did not even have Rome within its borders, which is interesting because, you know, they didn't even have Rome within the borders. The central location of the Holy Roman Empire actually was in Eastern Germany, in Bavaria. Okay, and the empire's territory extent varied over its history, but at its peak it encompassed the territories of present-day Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, the Czech Republics, Slovenia, Belgium, and the Netherlands, as well as parts of modern Poland, France, and Italy. For much of its history, the empire consisted of hundreds of smaller kingdoms, principalities, duchies, counties, free imperial cities, and other domains. Despite its name, the Holy Roman Empire never included Rome within its borders. Now we're going to deal with the Roman Empire, which is what most of us are familiar with. The Roman Empire, again, was a republic, okay? And after 500 years, it then became what they would call an autocratic form of government, because Julius Caesar was appointed the first perpetual dictator, okay? But it was never an empire, and in fact, what I found was that at the end of the Roman Empire and the beginning of the Holy Roman Empire, or the reestablishment of the Holy Roman Empire, the Holy Roman emperors made formal contestants, or they would contest any claim to hereditary nobility by any of the Roman emperors who were like Julius Caesar, Constantine. All these people were basically, they would file complaints on them and be like, y'all can't even claim to be nobility because y'all not indigenous to this land. So basically, it's kind of like the same thing we going through right now over here. And it was basically the indigenous Moors basically reacclimating their sovereignty in Europe from about 1000 AD to about like